Welcome to You Defend It with Rob Kilmer. The phone number to call into the show is 772-1290. As always, callers to the show will need to take a position, be able to defend it with an argument that is factual, not emotional. And if you can't make your point without insulting someone, you can't make your point on this show. Callers and guests will be treated with complete respect. For my part, I will ask questions that matter and give callers the opportunity to answer. My website is www.youdefendit.com. That's youdefendit.com. You can give me your comments on the show anytime. By Friday of each week, I will have the topics up for the next show. You can also visit my blog through the site, read my posts, and leave your own. All right, this week, I'm going to go quickly through the Sunday talk show lineup. CBS Face the Nation will have Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and Senator Charles Schumer. NBC's Meet the Press will have Senators John Kerry and Kay Bailey Hutchinson. Fox News Sunday will have Senators Richard Durbin and John Kyle. CNN State of the Union, this is kind of a long list, will have Senators Russ Feingold and John Ensign, Minnesota Governor Tim Pawlenty, Michigan Governor Jennifer Granholm, Senator Dianne Feinstein, Americans for Tax Reform President Grover Norquist, and Forbes CEO Steve Forbes, and lastly, former President Jimmy Carter. ABC's This Week will have Representative Barney Frank, Senator Jim DeMint, CEOs Eric Schmidt of Google and Frederick Smith of FedEx to give their takes on the nation's tattered economy. All right, last week a caller called in with a question about Guantanamo, and something that I had wondered early on, which was how is it that we have a naval base in Cuba when we aren't particularly friendly with Cuba. And the brief history of it is that on February 23rd, 1903, the Cuban-American Treaty was signed, granting the United States complete jurisdiction and control over the area for coaling and naval stations. A 1934 treaty reaffirmed the lease that we were obligated to make some minimal payments under the 1903 lease. The 1934 treaty reaffirmed the lease and granted Cuba and her trading partners free access through the bay. It also modified the lease payment from $2,000 in U.S. gold coins per year to the 1934 equivalent value of $3,086.36 in U.S. dollars, and made the lease, this is probably the most important part and explains why we are there today, made the lease permanent unless both governments agreed to break it or the U.S. abandoned the base property. That is from Wikipedia. So that's why we're still there, because we have a perpetual lease, and the only way it can be broken is if ways it can be broken are if both parties, Cuba and the United States, mutually agree to break it, or the United States abandons the property. So that's that. All right, this week I want to talk about the stimulus package that passed the House. As I'm sure you're aware, a stimulus package did pass the House without a single Republican vote, and it has not yet passed the Senate. Next week, they will continue to debate it, and we'll see what happens then. But right now, I don't think there's any real sense in talking about what the Senate is going to do, because I have no idea what the Senate is going to do. There's actually a very interesting development in the Senate where it looks like the Obama administration is considering a senator from New Hampshire, who's a Republican, as a Commerce Secretary to replace Bill Richardson, who had to withdraw. Now, he is a Republican. If he were to take the job, the Democratic governor of New Hampshire would appoint his successor. That appointee would likely be a Democrat. And, this is getting a little complicated, assuming that Al Franken is sworn in, the Democrats will have 60 votes, and that is crucial in the Senate, because that ends filibusters. The ability of the Republicans to stop legislation from moving forward via filibuster would end. So that's that we'll hear more about that, but it takes some time to confirm somebody, and you can be sure that in the next couple weeks, I think it's Senator Gregg from New Hampshire. I should know this. I just cannot think of his name right now. He will be offered everything under the sun to stay in the Republican Party, or to stay in the Senate as a Republican. All right, so I want to talk about the stimulus package that was passed by the House. Now, one of the things that drives me the craziest about the laws that are passed is that they get these names, like the Patriot Act, like No Child Left Behind. I think they should be out there by number. That's it. Every one of these things has a number, every one of these bills, and once they get names before they're passed, then any opposition to them is cast as an opposition to the name. Like the Patriot Act. How could you possibly oppose the Patriot Act? Wouldn't that by definition make you unpatriotic? And we just get into this all the time. But a real issue has arisen with respect to whether or not this stimulus package is a stimulus at all. And what I have done, and it took a while, I have been able to find what the House passed broken down into tax cuts and spending. And here it is. And then we'll go to a break, and after that we'll come back to it. The spending is $553.1 billion, and it includes $71.5 billion to extend and raise jobless benefits through 2009, boost aid to the poor, including food stamps. $153.2 billion to subsidize health care coverage for the jobless, help states with Medicaid and other programs. $103 billion to fund construction projects and repairs, including highways, bridges, mass transit, federal buildings, and water. $159 billion to provide school grants, aid to states, other school programs, boost Pell Grants by $500 to $5,350. $53.4 billion. Support science facilities, high-speed internet, other environmental and energy programs, and $13 billion to repair and weatherize public housing, help the homeless, and repair foreclosed homes. That equals $553 billion. Now, on the tax cut side, $145 billion for a $500 per worker, $1,000 per couple tax cut for 2 years. $23 billion to expand the $1,000 per child tax credit and earned income tax credit to the working poor. $10.3 billion to provide $2,500 tax credit for college. $6.9 billion homeowner tax credits. $20 billion extend quicker write-offs for depreciation of equipment, help companies losing money, to help companies that are losing money. It is not a tax cut to help companies lose money. And increase by $7 billion over 10 years the amount that can be depreciated. Also, tighten rules on firms that buy failing banks and merge them. $48.5 billion to subsidize local bonds for schools, infrastructure, economic development, and to extend energy tax credits. Now, within those numbers, the spending numbers themselves, there have been issues raised as to where that money is going and whether or not it should be going there, and we will talk about all that when we come back. But I think it is fair to question whether this will stimulate the economy. Just because it's called a stimulus bill doesn't guarantee that it'll work. And I think it's a legitimate debate in this country as to whether or not this is a stimulus bill at all. We will be right back. You are listening to You Defend It with Rob Kilmer right here on News Radio 1290 WNBF Binghamton. Welcome back to You Defend It with Rob Kilmer. The phone number to call into the show is 772-1290. All right, we left off talking about the stimulus package that was passed by the House, not yet passed by the Senate. And I want to talk about some of the elements of it. And at the end of the show, if there's time, I want to contrast all this with what Michael Bloomberg has proposed in New York City to deal with the financial problems there. All right, $71.5 billion. This is the first item in the spending portion of the stimulus package. Extend and raise jobless benefits through 2009. Boost aid to the poor, including food stamps. I think that is an important thing to do for the poor and the jobless. I think it has nothing to do with boosting the economy. And Democrats make this mistake all the time. They jam things in there that have absolutely nothing to do with their stated purpose, even though these things perhaps should be done. They should be done under separate legislation. And not only do they make themselves vulnerable to the Republicans who pounce on these sort of tactics by the Democrats, but it's disingenuous to do it. And they're going to pay a price for it, as they should. Okay, I think I have Frank on the line from Appalachian. Frank, you there?
Good morning, Mr. Kilmer.
Good morning, Frank.
Hi. I'm ready to pounce here, I think. When you're talking about the stimulus package,
yes,
it depends on which stimulus package you're talking about. There were two items in the original package, according to the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, Obie. $600 million was going to prepare the country for universal health care. I think they had Mr. Himmler prepared for that position.
Frank?
Well, hey, a little bit of levity doesn't hurt.
Himmler isn't exactly levity. Go ahead.
$400 million to generate a new computer model to predict global warming. Now, I thought Mr. Al Gore said global warming is a fait accompli. It's a given. And now we're going to spend $400 million to generate a new computer model. Well, those things disappeared. The Democrats took them out once these came to light. So, and my other numbers vary a little bit differently from yours. 5%, from what I understand, goes to infrastructure. But the thing that really kills me is that 8% of this will go into effect in the first 12 months. Now, if we have this terrible, terrible problem and we have to only spend 1 hour to debate it in Congress, I mean, this is incredible. We're going to put 8% in effect in the first 12 months. I just can't believe this.
Well, that's on the spending side.
Yeah.
The tax cuts will be effective when enacted. But you're right, as far as the spending is concerned. Thanks for the call.
Okay, bye.
Bye. As far as the spending is concerned, one of the biggest criticisms so far is that to the extent you want to stimulate the economy, you got to give it a quick boost. And this isn't really built for that. That has been the complaint. I don't know one way or the other. But I think it's fair to question if and how soon this money is going to be spent. And, I had said before that the Democrats have put things in here that shouldn't be in here. This was, in my opinion, a historic opportunity for the Democrats to do something straightforward that the country wanted and change the public perception of Democrats. And in the House, at least, they blew it. They absolutely blew it. They had it. They had it right there, and they blew it. Everything in this bill that is being cast as a stimulus package should have been designed and intended solely to stimulate the economy. You do not stimulate the economy by helping the needy, which isn't to say that you should not help the needy. You just can't call it a stimulus package. We are, by the way, the total cost of this right now is between $800 billion and $1 trillion. And if you're going to be spending that kind of money, and I distinctly remember Barack Obama saying the difference between the way he was going to do things and the way that the Bush administration had done things when talking about the deficit, the massive deficits run up under Bush, at least we'd have something to show for it. Bridges, roads, things like that. Bridges and roads. We're talking out of this entire spending portion, $103 billion to fund construction projects and repairs for highways, bridges, and mass transit. $103 billion out of $1 trillion, possibly 10%. That's just not going to get you there. It is. The rest of the stuff that's on here, school grants, high-speed internet, that is not going to stimulate the economy. It's just simply not going to. I don't mean to sound like I'm jumping on the Republican bandwagon here, but facts are facts. Come on. It is disappointing that an opportunity of this magnitude has been lost. You had an opportunity. You had a country basically through this last election crying out for help. We had 40,000 job losses announced in one day last week. If ever there was a time to stimulate the economy, it is now. And to cast this as stimulus when it's really, there's as much social spending in here. There's more than there is that's designed to put people to work. It's just not going to work, I don't believe. Okay. I believe we have Bob from Binghamton on the phone. You there?
Good morning, Professor.
Professor.
Yes. I've had some economics courses in college, and I remember them talking about the multiplier effect when products are made and consumed, etc. But all these social programs and all, like birth control and AIDS prevention and other social type programs, and then there's putting new sod on the mall, and I'm inclined to agree with you. It's not the best use of that money.
I just don't see where an economy in this kind of crisis is going to be helped by spending on things other than immediate job creation. Helping people who've already lost their jobs should be debated under a separate bill. I actually got another caller. I got to let you go, Bob. I want to get this in before 8:30. Thank you very much for calling in. Maria, are you there?
Yes. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Well, I'm not usually at a loss for words, and I probably shouldn't be calling a call-in program when I am, but...
You called in with nothing to say?
Oh, yeah, I have plenty to say, but my head is like a bowl of popcorn. I have so many ideas popping around that I don't know where to start. It would have been far more expedient if, as they did before with the stimulus, that the middle classes who are getting their feathers picked until, they're nothing but skin, would have gotten a substantial amount. How many people in this country that are probably on their last legs with their refrigerator, a car just crawling up the road, and they're babying that along so they can get to work? I mean, the big ticket items are not being sold because people are frightened to buy anything. They're trying to hold on to their money.
Right.
And I'm awfully disappointed to say it, because I'll tell you this, I'm independent, I'm either Democratic or Republican, I have no faith in either of those parties. But this last piece of frolly here is nothing more, by my limited observation, as a big pork barrel give out. And we already have a neighboring state that's going to use the smallest fraction of what they get for the roads and the infrastructure. And God knows we need that repaired all through this country. The bridges and and the highways and how many things are just in decrepit condition. There is a place to really build this country up again. But no, we're having all of the enlargement of all these social programs that are going to cost a great deal of money and probably not result in anything positive. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope everybody who feels that way is wrong, but I'm with you. They blew it.
Well, thanks very much for calling in.
Have a great day.
You too. Yeah, I mean, this was such an incredible opportunity for the Democrats. And the Republicans, they played it smart in the House. They're not voting for this. Not a single Republican vote. As I looked through the spending, I just couldn't. I thought when this was advertised, I thought it was going to be, a massive construction bill, putting people to work building things. Okay, I'm running a little behind here. I got to go from 8:30 to 8:35. After that, God's little brother Roger Neal will be reporting in from Whitney Point, and then we will be back right after him. Welcome back to You Defend It with Rob Kilmer. The phone number to call into the show is 772-1290. We left off talking about the so-called stimulus package. I also wanted to talk about the tax cuts end of it. Now, I understand the theory there, that the more money people have in their pockets, the more they will spend, and if you tax them less, they'll have more to spend. My question is this: how much do we want to direct towards tax cuts when there are fewer people with jobs? I know that may sound like circular logic, but should we not be spending more of the money? And again, I'm appalled at the spending side of this, but I don't understand the emphasis on tax cuts at all. We got tax cuts that we had that were supposed to prevent us from getting into this spot in the first place. That didn't happen. And I understand some of it as it relates to homeowners, but there are fewer and fewer of them. We need to get the people to work, not reduce the amount of taxes taken from them when they work. We got to put this in order, I think. We got to get them to work first. I wouldn't mind an $800 billion spending program, to be honest with you, if we were fundamentally rebuilding things across this nation that needed to be built. That's when your big-ticket items get bought. When you are putting, 1 million construction projects together, that's where jobs are created. And then you have the residual effects. You have people who are being paid to build things, buying things. It would seem to me, and again, this is remedial from my part, but I don't understand why we are not injecting an enormous amount of cash into this economy by jobs, by projects. And I guess I'll hear about it or hear more about it in the coming weeks. I got Paul from Vestal. You there?
Yes, I am. How you doing?
Good. How you doing? Thanks for calling.
Good. I think, from my perspective, I believe in earmarks because sometimes, or a lot of times, the money goes absolutely to all the wrong places. You
believe in earmarks, did you say?
Yes.
Okay.
Because for some reason, we just can't trust a lot of these politicians. I mean, and I haven't. I'd be lying to you if I told you that I've read where a lot of this money is going. I've listened to your show. I've listened to the Savage Nation. So I'm just repeating from what I hear because I got to believe that you gentlemen have done the research. But what I'm directly against is the monies that are buried in the bill that go to absolutely for things that I don't believe they should be going to,
like what?
I think there was one was, the more funding for birth control type of thing.
Yeah, I've heard that from a couple people. I don't know if that's in there, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was, and it shouldn't be.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Now, as far as the infrastructure, I'm not against that. My belief is that the reason why they're pumping this money into the infrastructure, because you know as well as I do, I mean, even here in Broome County, a lot of our infrastructure is falling apart. I mean, the city of Binghamton's had numerous problems with the infrastructure system, and Mayor Bucci had a heck of a time before him, Mayor Crabb, and now Mayor Ryan, and nobody wants to tackle it because, holy cow, there goes your taxes through the roof.
And even just some of the roads. I mean, why not? You need a chiropractor after you drive to work. But
so the bottom line is, I think he's pumping the money in there because he knows a lot of these municipalities, counties, and states, they don't have the tax money.
Right.
But ultimately, the tax money comes from all of us. The ludicrous thing, I think, is that, all these unemployed people are now all of a sudden going to be construction and road workers, and they're going to be back to work. I mean, I don't follow that at all.
Well, that's a good point. You got me saying a minute ago, let's put 1 million, construction jobs together. Are there that many people to build things? But I would think that, and I got to let you go here. I got a couple more calls I need to get to. Thanks for calling in.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I don't know how many people there are available to build things in this country, but I am thinking that we are, as this bill is currently, as it currently stands before the Senate either changes it or passes it as is or it doesn't pass it at all, as it stands right now, it's not putting all those people to work. And I just am stunned looking at this, that the Democrats, with an opportunity to really change the image of the party, have done this. Now, I concede that they made their bipartisan nod to the Republicans by including tax breaks or tax cuts of some kind, although I don't see where there is a commitment in here to extend the Bush tax cuts. These seem like more targeted tax cuts. These are not reducing the tax rate permanently for income taxes. But again, when you are spending this kind of money, if you could sell it to the country, I think, that you're going to spend $750 billion reconstructing this country and in the process put hundreds of thousands of Americans, if not millions, back to work or prevent others from being laid off. But when the majority, the vast majority of this bill goes to things that will not create a single job, I think you have failed miserably, not only in addressing the problem of the economy, but in seizing an opportunity that is not only historic in proportions, but more importantly, it's what you were elected to do. How many times have we heard that this was a change election? How many times have we heard that this is a nation in crisis and we have to do something? People believe in that. I believed in that. And this thing? You've got to be kidding me. I don't know. We'll see what happens with it. But I don't have very high hopes. Bill from Endicott, are you there?
Yes, I am. How you doing?
Good. Welcome to the show.
Yeah. Well, I got to disagree with you.
Okay.
With what you're saying about it doomed to fail.
I'm not sure it's doomed to fail. I just think it could do a heck of a lot more.
Well, I like to look at it this way. I think that the spending where they want to go will actually cause a demand for increased production. It's going to cause a demand for more food products, for more clothing, for more other things, and this will cause a further demand for manufacturers, which will cause a demand for the bankers to lend again.
Which parts of this do you think will create that demand?
Well, from what you were talking about, where they want to give the money to the people that are the most needy.
Okay.
And if they get this money, they're going to, these people they've got nothing. They need more shoes for their feet. They need more clothes on their back. That's the reason why we have clothing drives and all this stuff going on. Now, if we had people that were producing this stuff, they can't sell it. They can't borrow money from the banks because the banks know they won't sell it. So they got to close down their shops. They're not going to produce it.
Right.
So if you allow these people to turn around and go out and have the money to go out and buy new, it will cause a demand and it will ripple right through the whole economy. And I personally think that it would cause a wave that would go right through and circulate through the whole economy.
Well, don't you think that that the best way to do that would have been just to send checks, as to the lowest income people?
Yes, I do. I agree with it. But maybe they had that included in the bill. I don't know. I haven't read the bill. I don't know. And I probably wouldn't want to read it anyway. It's probably too thick for me.
Well, the nearest thing I can see from what I have to that is $71.5 billion to extend and raise jobless benefits and boost aid to the poor, including food stamps.
Yeah.
But other than that, out of a $800 billion program,
I don't see. There's a lot of waste.
Well, I just don't see where there's, for what you think is important, and I'm not saying it's not. And I'm not saying that you're wrong. I think you're probably right. More money in the pockets of people who would spend it, rather than, the argument that when you cut taxes for the wealthy, they don't necessarily spend it. But there really isn't much in this even for that. There's $71 billion in aid to the poor out of $800 billion. I just don't see where money is going to get into people's pockets for them to spend it under this package.
Yeah, I can see, because I think you have to say, because nobody wants to trust anybody anymore. And I can see why you feel that way, that you can't trust the people that are going to be dispensing this stuff.
I don't have a problem with that. I'm saying that by design, it isn't going to go to where people would use it in a way that would stimulate the economy.
That's what I'm talking about, this trust. You don't see it's going to go where they say it's going to go, and I agree with that.
Well, I'm afraid that it is going to go where they say it's going to go, and that's my problem with it. But
yeah, I have a problem with that too, but I think if we have, if it does get there, it's going to cause a ripple effect and increase the flow of funds and allow the banks to have trust again that people will pay their debts.
Okay. Hey, thanks very much for calling in.
Okay.
I hope you call again.
Mm-hmm. Bye-bye.
Bye. I got to go to a break here in a second, and when we come back, we'll talk about actually an article I saw on the way in today. I picked up the New York Post, and as this is similar to what I was talking about with Governor Patterson, how he at least seemed to address the fiscal problems of the state head on, and everybody was screaming about it, but nobody was offering an alternative. So when we come back, we will talk about Michael Bloomberg's suggestions for resolving the problems of New York City's finances. You are listening to Rob Kilmer right here on News Radio 1290 WMBF Binghamton. Welcome back to You Defend It with Rob Kilmer. Got just a few minutes left in the show, and I wanted to go over an article in the New York Post this morning. Yesterday, Michael Bloomberg set forth his plan to deal with the financial problems being faced by New York City. This is from today's New York Post, and I won't read all of it. Coping with a severe economic downturn, Michael Bloomberg yesterday unveiled a bare-bones budget for the next year that raises taxes and fees that will hit virtually all city residents while putting the squeeze on every city agency. The city is in a jam because revenues are expected to tumble by $5 billion, or 13% between 2008 and 2010, he explained in a detailed 90-minute budget presentation at City Hall. He proposed closing a $4 billion budget gap in 2010 with $955 million in cuts and savings that reached into every agency, from the New York Police Department, which stood to lose another 1,000 cops through attrition, to the Fire Department, which could see 12 companies vanish, to the Child Welfare Agency, which was asked to absorb 608 layoffs. Also on the table, a 5-cent tax on plastic bags to bring in $84 million, and an increase in parking meter rates, along with jail visits shrinking from 5 days a week to 4, nighttime morgue staff being downsized, ambulance tours being slashed, and parking summons hearings taking place on fewer days. The budget plan reduces custodial service in schools. The city might also stop providing kits of household goods to homeless families transitioning into permanent housing, and 1,000 positions at the Administration for Children's Services would be eliminated. Overall, the mayor's plan envisions 23,000 fewer city employees. And of course, people are outraged. The New York Post is saying, what's going on here? The headline, or the front page of the New York Post, really focuses more on the drastic nature of this than the fact that it might actually solve the problem. I think it is another example of a complete lack of discipline, and discipline in people's thinking. What do they think is going to happen when there is a deficit? It is amazing to me that although they know, they intellectually accept that there is a problem, they do not accept that there will be pain associated with solving it. I commend Mayor Bloomberg for taking the steps necessary, or at least announcing them, to solve a problem. We talked about this with Governor Patterson. He's going to raise taxes and cut spending. And that's what, it looks like that's what Michael Bloomberg is going to do. He's going to raise taxes and fees and cut spending. What other way is there to reduce a deficit? What other way? There's no other way. Now we'll hear that, well, when you cut taxes, you will eventually, the revenue that is generated from cutting the taxes will exceed the tax revenue loss. That's all garbage. And I don't mean because theoretically it can't happen. I mean because realistically it has never paid down a cent of a deficit. The people who propose cutting taxes to stimulate the economy don't intend to pay it back. That theory has been pitched since Ronald Reagan. And as I've said on this show, we have had 20 of the last 28 years Republican presidents. During each of those 20 years, the government spent more money than it brought in. Every single year. 90% of the deficit of this country was created under Republican presidents. You know how many payments Republican presidents have made on the national debt? None. And it's just, I think that whole theory has been discredited. I'm going to try and get in one more call here, if I can. Sherry, you there on line one?
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Morning. Thanks for calling in.
Listening to your program is very interesting, and I have some pretty strong feelings about this. From everything, including the first stimulus bill. I've heard it called porkulus bill so many times, and there is a great deal of pork in it. If everything I've heard is true, I mean, there are even certain allocations for people to receive benefits that are illegal aliens.
That I've heard that too. That I have not confirmed, but at this point, it wouldn't surprise me.
That's true. And then as far as the list that you were just reading from Mayor Bloomberg,
yes,
that is interesting to me, and the fact that it's rare that you hear the city having to make these cutbacks. It's usually upstate that has to pay for the city. So I found that angle quite interesting. But my suggestion for the whole shebang, for the whole country, and as well as New York City, would be, why do we not do the no-brainer and focus on ridding ourselves of illegal aliens and closing our borders? That, in my opinion, would be one of the biggest reliefs we could give to the entire country.
Well, thanks for calling in.
You're very welcome.
You know, one of the issues with respect to illegal immigration right now, the whole argument before had been, well, these people are doing jobs that Americans won't do. Not so much anymore. Unemployment in Michigan is climbing, I think it's at 10%. And, you know, I think that argument, that debate is going to resurrect itself as far as whether or not the people who are here illegally will be doing jobs that Americans, or are doing jobs that Americans won't do or don't want. Of course, the flip side of that is, as the economy continues to shed jobs, there may be less illegal immigration because there are fewer jobs to come here to. But that's a conversation for another week. We're just about done here. Next week, I suspect we will be talking about what the Senate has done between now and then on the stimulus package. I'm putting that word in quotes when I write it. You know, again, I just believe that the Democrats had an incredible opportunity here, incredible, and everything that they put in this bill that doesn't boost the economy is probably it's worthy of a vote, but in a separate bill. You know, these are age-old conflicts between the Republicans and the Democrats, the social spending, whatever. Nothing wrong with debating whether or not that should be done, but it's got nothing to do with stimulating the economy. And it's bad for everybody that the job didn't get done. Thank you for listening to You Defend It. Please visit my website, www.youdefendit.com, and we will see you next week.